Welcome back to the Sleepy Professor channel. Before we begin, allow your body to soften into the place where it is resting. Take a slow breath in through your nose, calm and unforced, and let it drift out through your mouth as if you are gently releasing the day. There is a quiet moment that arrives each night, though most people pass through it without noticing. It is the moment when the mind realizes that nothing more is required of it. No decisions to make, no problems to solve, no vigilance to maintain. In that moment, the brain begins to loosen its grip on the world, not abruptly, but carefully, as if it understands that rest works best when it is invited rather than forced. Psychologists have learned that sleep does not come from exhaustion alone. It comes from a sense of safety, the deep, internal understanding that it is acceptable to stop monitoring everything around you. And safety often arrives in the form of continuity. As these words move forward at a steady pace, your attention does not need to stay perfectly aligned. It may follow closely for a while, then drift slightly, then return again without effort. The mind is comfortable when it knows it can wander and still be held. One of the more subtle discoveries in modern psychology is that the brain has a distinct mode that exists just before sleep. It is not fully awake, and it is not yet dreaming. In this state, the mind begins to favor efficiency over detail. Thoughts grow broader, less precise, more impressionistic. Exactness no longer matters, only coherence remains. This is why ideas can feel complete even when they are unfinished, and why questions lose their urgency at night. The brain is gently turning down the volume on precision. You may notice this now as a sense of softness behind your thoughts, as if the mind itself has padded the edges of its own awareness. There is also a shift in how attention behaves during this time. During the day, attention scans constantly, as checking, evaluating, anticipating. At night, that scanning gradually slows. Neuroscientists have observed that when sound arrives at a predictable rhythm, the brain reduces its alert monitoring activity. It stops searching for surprises. This is why consistent narration can feel soothing. Not because it demands focus, but because it signals stability, and stability allows the mind to rest. As the evening deepens, the brain also begins to loosen its sense of identity. The internal voice that says "I am," "I must," "I should" grows quieter. Psychologically, this is known as self-softening. The boundaries that usually define who you are begin to blur, just enough for the mind to feel lighter. Thoughts shift from personal urgency to neutral observation. This is why sleep can feel like gently stepping out of yourself, without fear or resistance. The mind is practicing being without weight. Another quiet process unfolds as language begins to change its role. Before sleep, the brain slowly separates sound from meaning. Words become less important for what they represent and more for how they feel as they pass. This is why you may hear sentences without fully processing them. Meaning dissolves into tone, rhythm, and pause. This is not inattention, it is transition. The brain also begins to handle memories differently. Recent thoughts and experiences are not erased, but they are moved slightly farther away, as if placed on a shelf just beyond reach. Psychologists believe this distancing is protective. It prevents unresolved thoughts from demanding immediate action. Problems do not disappear, they simply lose their urgency. And urgency is the opposite of rest. You may notice that as listening continues, your breathing no longer requires guidance. It has settled into a natural pattern. This indicates a shift from conscious regulation to automatic rhythm, a sign that the nervous system is moving toward rest. When breathing regulates itself, attention is freed, and freed attention tends to drift. There is something deeply calming to the brain about being guided without instruction. Studies in therapeutic narration show that when a voice leads without commanding, the listener's mind mirrors the calm state being presented, not because it is persuaded, but because it feels accompanied. An accompaniment reduces the need for alertness. Another subtle psychological shift involves how the brain processes choice. As sleep approaches, the mind becomes less interested in selecting the right thought. Ideas are allowed to pass without evaluation. There is no need to judge or correct them. Evaluation requires energy. Observation does not. This is why thoughts can appear and fade without pulling you along with them. At night, the mind prefers gentle certainty over factual accuracy. During waking hours, the brain seeks truth and precision. Before sleep, it seeks reassurance. This is why stories feel more believable at night, and worries feel less convincing. Certainty tells the brain it can stop questioning. As awareness softens, the brain begins to experience tiny moments of rest between thoughts. These micro-rests last only fractions of a second, but they accumulate. Most people never notice them, but together they create the pathway into sleep. Another rarely discussed change involves time perception. As the brain prepares for sleep, its sense of time becomes less defined. Seconds stretch, minutes lose their structure. This temporal softening is one reason the future feels less pressing at night. Without a strong sense of time, there is nothing to rush toward. Listening itself is a form of rest. Neuroscientific research shows that passive auditory attention requires far less energy than active thinking. This is why listening can continue even as thinking fades. The mind stays present without effort. As this continues, you may notice moments where you forget a sentence or lose track of where the thought was going. This is not distraction, it is the mind briefly resting. Psychologists call this local sleep, where small regions of the brain rest before full sleep begins. You're not falling behind, you're moving forward. There is also a softening in emotional weight. Thoughts that once felt heavy become lighter, as if wrapped in something warm. The mind has a natural way of moving deeper into rest, one quiet step at a time. It does not announce its progress. It does not ask permission. It simply continues, as it always has, guided by rhythms older than conscious thought. As listening carries on, the brain begins to recognize that nothing here requires response. No action follows these words. No expectation waits at the end of them, and so the mind settles further, like a lake smoothing itself once the wind has passed. There is a lesser-known psychological process that unfolds as wakefulness fades, sometimes called attentional narrowing. At first, attention is wide, aware of many things at once. Gradually it becomes selective, not sharper, but softer. The mind chooses fewer things to notice, and notices them less intensely. This is why external sounds may feel farther away now, and internal thoughts quieter, as if they are happening in another room. The brain is conserving energy by focusing on almost nothing at all. Another change happens in the way thoughts connect to one another. During the day, thoughts link logically, one idea pulling the next into place. At night, those links loosen. Ideas still appear, but they no longer insist on forming a chain. They can exist briefly and then dissolve. This is not confusion, it is flexibility. And flexibility allows the mind to release effort. Psychologists have found that before sleep, the brain reduces activity in regions responsible for self-monitoring. This means the part of the mind that asks, "How am I doing?" or "Am I thinking correctly?" begins to fade. Without self-monitoring, there is no pressure to stay awake. There is only experience, gently unfolding. You may notice that the sense of your body feels different now. Not gone, just less defined. This is because the brain is reducing sensory precision. It no longer needs exact information about position or tension. As awareness of the body softens, so does the mind's attachment to being fully present. There is something important happening beneath all of this. The brain is shifting its priority from interaction to restoration. During waking hours, the mind is outward-facing. Before sleep, it turns inward. Energy that once fueled attention now supports repair. This inward turn feels like heaviness, warmth, or drifting. All signs of the mind doing exactly what it is meant to do. Listening continues to serve as a gentle anchor, not something to hold on to tightly, but something that keeps awareness from snapping back into alertness. The sound of a calm voice provides, for calm, continuity without demand, and continuity reassures the nervous system. Another subtle process unfolds in memory systems. The brain begins to decouple emotion from narrative. Events lose their emotional charge, becoming neutral observations rather than personal concerns. This is why memories can surface briefly and then fade without pulling you into them. They are being prepared for rest. As this happens, language itself becomes less concrete. Words may still be heard, but their meaning becomes secondary to their rhythm. The mind listens the way one listens to rain, aware but unconcerned. This is a sign that cognition is yielding to sensation. Psychologists often describe sleep as a form of surrender, but not a dramatic one. It is more like setting something down because you no longer need to carry it. Thoughts are not forced away. They are simply allowed to pass through without resistance. Resistance requires effort, and effort has already been released. There is also a quiet reduction in the brain's predictive behavior. Normally the mind tries to anticipate what comes next. Before sleep, that anticipation fades. You may not be trying to guess the next sentence. You may not even care that there is one. This absence of anticipation is deeply calming. The mind also becomes less interested in distinction. Differences between ideas blur. Everything feels similar in tone and importance. This is why everything can feel equally distant or equally present. Uniformity signals safety. You may notice moments where awareness seems to dip briefly, then return. These are not interruptions, they are the mind testing sleep. Each time awareness fades and comes back, the brain gathers confidence that it can let go completely. Another little-known phenomenon occurs in the auditory system. As sleep approaches, the brain prioritizes tone over content. This means the emotional quality of sound matters more than the words themselves. A calm tone tells the nervous system that it can rest, and the nervous system listens carefully. The mind also begins to simplify its internal world. Complex ideas lose structure. Abstract concerns flatten into general impressions. This simplification reduces cognitive load, and reduced load leads naturally to rest. You may find that your sense of direction in the story has faded. Not lost, just unimportant. The mind no longer needs to know where it is going. Movement itself is enough. There is a gentle slowing in mental tempo now. Thoughts arrive less frequently. Pauses between them lengthen. This slowing is not imposed. It emerges naturally when the brain no longer needs to perform. Another protective shift occurs in emotional processing. The mind temporarily suspends deep emotional evaluation. Feelings are acknowledged without being explored. This prevents emotional activation from interrupting rest. As awareness continues to soften, the boundary between listening and thinking becomes less clear. You may not be sure whether you're hearing the words or imagining them. This blending is one of the final steps before sleep. The brain also begins to release its grip on intention. You're no longer listening to sleep. You're simply listening, and that distinction matters. Intention keeps the mind active. Presence allows it to fade. Psychological research shows that when the mind feels gently occupied, it relaxes more fully than when it is completely empty. This is why soft narration works so well for sleep. It gives the mind a place to rest without asking it to engage. At this point, many people experience a sense of floating, not physical movement, but mental lightness. This is the mind letting go of effort-based awareness. Another shift happens in the way the brain handles uncertainty. During the day, uncertainty demands resolution. At night, uncertainty is accepted. This acceptance reduces tension, and reduced tension opens the door to sleep. The mind also becomes less interested in coherence. Thoughts do not need to make sense, they only need to pass, and passing is effortless. You may notice that inner silence feels closer now. Not total silence, but a soft quiet beneath the words. This is the background state of the resting brain. The words simply float on top of it. As the story continues, attention may flicker briefly, then fade again. There is no need to correct this. The brain is practicing letting go. Another quiet adjustment involves expectation. You may no longer be waiting for something to happen. This absence of expectation is one of the strongest predictors of falling asleep. Listening has become almost automatic now. The mind receives sound without effort. Thinking has stepped aside. The body too follows the mind's lead. Muscle tone decreases, microtension releases. Even if you are not consciously relaxing, the nervous system is doing it for you. As awareness continues to drift, the mind's relationship with language dissolves further. Words become shapes. Shapes become sensations. Sensations fade into quiet. At this stage, sleep may arrive at any moment, or it may wake quietly, allowing the mind to settle just a little more. There is no schedule to follow. The brain knows when to let go. And so the narrative continues, not to keep you awake, but to give your mind something gentle to lean against as it drifts. Nothing here asks for attention. Nothing here demands understanding. Everything simply moves forward at the same calm pace, allowing rest to deepen naturally. There is a point in the journey towards sleep where the mind no longer feels as if it is moving forward. Instead, it feels as though it is gently sinking, as if awareness itself has grown heavier and begun to settle. This sensation is not imagined. Psychologists have identified it as a natural stage in the descent toward rest, when mental activity becomes more diffuse and less directional. At this point, the mind is no longer following the story, it is simply allowing it to pass. As listening continues, the brain's internal timing mechanisms begin to slow. Neural rhythms stretch, allowing larger gaps between moments of attention. This is why time can feel indistinct now. Minutes may pass unnoticed. Moments blend together. The brain has stopped measuring. There is also a subtle reduction in contrast. Differences between thoughts become less pronounced. Everything feels similarly distant, similarly quiet. Psychologically, this uniformity signals that there is nothing requiring prioritization, and without priority there is no urgency. The mind also changes how it handles sensory information. During the day, sensations are sharp and clearly defined. Before sleep they soften. The brain reduces resolution, much like dimming a screen. This is why the body may feel heavier or less precise now. It is not losing awareness, and it is conserving energy. Another little-known process unfolds within attention itself. The mind begins to favor passive reception over active engagement. Instead of reaching towards sounds or thoughts, awareness simply allows them to arrive. This passive mode requires far less energy, and energy saved is energy available for restoration. At this stage, internal dialogue often becomes fragmented. Thoughts may begin and then fade before completing. This is not interruption, it is release. The brain no longer needs full sentences to communicate with itself. Psychologists have observed that when internal speech fades, the brain shifts towards sensory imagination. Images may appear without detail, movements without form. These impressions are not dreams yet, they are the threshold. Listening continues to provide a gentle thread through this experience. Not a tether, but a presence. Something consistent that reassures the mind it does not need to wake itself. Another quiet change occurs in emotional processing. The brain reduces its response to emotional stimuli. Feelings may still exist, but they lack intensity. This emotional flattening is protective. It prevents spikes that might disrupt rest. You may notice that your awareness of your surroundings has narrowed further. External sounds fade into the background. The mind is choosing what to notice and choosing very little. There is also a shift in how the brain handles memory retrieval. Before sleep, the mind stops actively searching memory. Memories may surface, but they are not pursued. This prevents mental loops. As this happens, the sense of narrative continuity becomes less important. The mind no longer needs the story to make sense. It simply allows the flow to continue. Another phenomenon emerges. The mind's sense of agency weakens. You may feel less like a thinker and more like an observer. This is not dissociation. It is rest. The brain also begins to reduce its monitoring of the environment. This reduction is only possible when safety has been established. The steady rhythm of sound contributes to this sense of safety. At this point, awareness may flicker in and out. Moments of near sleep appear. These are not failures to stay awake. They are rehearsals for letting go. The mind also begins to lose interest in self-reference. Thoughts about you become less frequent. Ideas lose their personal attachment. This reduces emotional engagement. As language continues to soften, you may find that you're no longer following individual sentences. This is expected. The brain is transitioning away from structured cognition. Another protective mechanism involves expectation. The mind stops waiting for changes. This absence of expectation creates a stable psychological environment. Stability invites sleep. The body mirrors these changes. Heart rate slows slightly. Breathing deepens without instruction. Muscles release residual tension. These are automatic processes. Listening now may feel almost distant. The voice becomes part of the background. This is not disengagement, it is absorption. the brain also begins to release the need for orientation. You may not be aware of where you are in the room. Spatial awareness softens. This helps detach consciousness from the physical environment. As thoughts continue to thin, the mind may feel quiet but not empty. This quiet is the foundation of sleep. Psychological research suggests that sleep begins when awareness stops trying to manage experience. You're already approaching that state. Nothing needs to be done. At this stage, even curiosity fades. The mind no longer asks questions, it simply receives. The story continues not to stimulate, but to occupy just enough space to prevent alertness. This balance is delicate and effective. You may notice brief images, fragments, or sensations appearing and disappearing. These are early dream elements. They do not need interpretation. The brain also begins to disconnect from linear time. Past, present, and future lose distinction. Only now remains, and even that softens. As listening continues, the distinction between hearing and thinking becomes less clear. The words may feel like they are arising from within rather than outside. This blending is a sign of deepening rest. The mind also reduces resistance. If a thought appears, it is allowed. If it fades, it is not recalled. This acceptance is key to sleep. The body continues its quiet descent. Temperature regulation shifts. Limbs may feel warm or heavy. These are signs of parasympathetic dominance. Awareness may now feel like it is floating, not moving, not anchored. This is a natural precursor to sleep. The narrative does not change pace. It remains steady, predictable, unhurried. Predictability is comforting. At any moment now, sleep may take over completely, or it may wait just a little longer. Both are fine. The mind, is in no hurry. As the mind continues its quiet descent, there is a noticeable shift in how awareness relates to experience. It no longer feels centered or focused. Instead, it spreads out, becoming diffuse and gentle, like light fading evenly rather than dimming at a single point. This diffusion of awareness is one of the final adjustments before sleep fully takes hold. At this stage, the brain's default mode network, the system responsible for self-reflection and internal narration, begins to disengage. When this network quiets, the sense of an inner narrator softens. Thoughts no longer feel narrated. They simply arise, then dissolve. There is also a reduction in mental contrast. Strong ideas lose intensity. Subtle sensations blend together. The mind no longer distinguishes sharply between one experience and another. This blending is comforting. You may notice that your breathing feels deeper now, even if you have not changed it intentionally. This is the body, responding to the mind's release of control. When thinking quiets, the body knows it can rest. Another gentle change occurs in auditory perception. Sounds become less localized. The voice may no longer feel as though it is coming from a specific direction. Instead, it becomes part of the environment of rest. This is a sign that sensory integration is shifting towards sleep. Psychologists describe this phase as hypnagogic drift, a transitional state where the mind is neither fully awake nor fully asleep. In this state, logic loosens, imagination becomes fluid, awareness floats. The mind also reduces its attachment to coherence. Ideas no longer need to connect. Fragments are acceptable. This reduces cognitive effort. As listening continues, the sense of continuity remains, even as comprehension fades. The brain recognizes the rhythm and allows the content to blur. Another protective mechanism engages here. The brain temporarily reduces responsiveness to unexpected stimuli. This does not mean you would not wake if necessary. It means the threshold for interruption has risen. The mind feels secure enough to rest. You may notice that internal imagery becomes more prominent. Not vivid scenes, but soft impressions. Colors without shape, movement without direction. These are the mind's first steps into dreaming. The sense of time may feel almost absent now. There is no urgency to the next moment. This timelessness is deeply calming. The mind also stops checking itself. There is no evaluation of whether you're relaxed enough or sleepy enough. Those questions require effort. Effort has been released. Listening may now feel like background noise. This is ideal. The brain uses the sound as a stabilizing element while consciousness fades. Another shift occurs in emotional tone. Even neutral emotions flatten. Everything feels calm, distant, and acceptable. This emotional neutrality prevents arousal. The body continues to follow. The mind's lead. Muscles release residual tension. The jaw softens, the tongue rests. These small adjustments signal readiness for sleep. At this point, awareness may fade for several seconds at a time. You may not notice these gaps. They are signs that sleep is approaching. The mind no longer tracks the narrative. It simply allows it to continue. There is no need to hold on to any sentence. Psychologists note that sleep often begins when the mind stops trying to fall asleep. You may have already stopped trying. The sense of self becomes minimal. There is no story about who you are or what you're doing. Only experience remains. The voice continues, not to guide, but to reassure. Its consistency tells the brain that nothing has changed. Nothing requires attention. As awareness fades further, the distinction between inside and outside blurs. The voice may feel internal. Thoughts may feel external. This blending is normal. The brain also begins to reduce cortical, activity associated with planning and intention. There is no next step, only now. You may feel a subtle heaviness behind the eyes. This is a common precursor to sleep. The visual system is disengaging. Listening continues effortlessly. The mind does not resist. Resistance has no purpose here. At this depth, even curiosity dissolves. There is no desire to understand, only to rest. The narrative remains gentle and unchanging. Change would require attention. Attention is no longer available. Sleep may now arrive fully, or it may hover just at the edge. Both are signs of success. The brain is doing exactly what it has done every night of your life. You do not need to help it. And so, the words continue softly, patiently, offering presence without demand, allowing the mind to slip quietly into rest. As the mind reaches the deepest layers of rest, something subtle and reassuring takes place. Awareness does not disappear suddenly. Instead, it thins like mist lifting from a quiet field just before dawn. There is no clear moment when waking ends and sleep begins. The transition is soft, almost unnoticeable. At this depth, the brain has largely released its need to interpret. Sounds no longer require meaning. Thoughts no longer require structure. Everything that arises is allowed to fade on its own. This is not emptiness, it is spaciousness. The mind now operates in a state of gentle reception. There is no effort to follow, no effort to remember. Listening continues, but without attention attached to it. The voice becomes part of the environment of rest, like distant rain or a quiet breeze. Psychologists have observed that, in this state, the brain's boundaries between senses begin to soften. Sound may feel like movement. Movement may feel like warmth. Experience blends together into a single, calm field. You may no longer be aware of your position, your posture, or even the room around you. This loss of spatial detail is natural. The brain no longer needs to locate the body precisely. It is safe to let go. There is also a deep release of mental ownership. Thoughts, if they appear at all, do not feel like yours. They pass without invitation and leave without resistance. This detachment prevents reactivation of wakefulness. The body continues its quiet work. Breathing remains slow and regular. Heart rate settles into a steady rhythm. Muscles remain relaxed without instruction. All of this happens automatically. At this stage, consciousness may drift in and out without memory. Short stretches of sleep may already be occurring. This is normal. The mind tests sleep gently before entering it fully. The narrative continues not because it is needed, but because it is harmless. It provides continuity without stimulation. The brain recognizes that nothing here requires awakening. Emotional tone remains neutral and distant. Even comfort itself becomes abstract. This emotional flattening protects sleep from interruption. The sense of time is now almost entirely absent. There is no anticipation of the next moment. There is no awareness of how long you have been here. This timelessness is a hallmark of deep rest. The mind also releases language. Words may be heard but not understood, or they may dissolve before reaching awareness. This is the mind transitioning fully into sleep, At times, fragments of imagery may appear. They are fleeting, incomplete, and unimportant. They do not need interpretation. They are simply the first quiet movements of dreaming. The voice continues steady and unchanged. Change would invite attention. Consistency invites surrender. At this depth, the brain no longer checks for safety. It assumes safety. This assumption allows sleep to take over completely. If awareness returns briefly, it does so without concern. There is no frustration. There is no effort to remain awake or to fall asleep. Both have lost importance. The body remains still. The mind remains open. Nothing is required. Sleep may deepen now, or it may hover gently, waiting for the final release. Either way, the process is already complete. As the words continue softly, they begin to resemble the beginning of the journey rather than the end. A familiar rhythm, a calm introduction, a gentle presence. And somewhere within that familiarity, the mind recognizes the same sense of safety it felt before, the same invitation to rest, the same quiet assurance. Welcome back to the Sleepy Professor channel. Before we begin, allow your body to soften into the place where it is resting. Take a slow breath in through your nose, calm and unforced, and let it drift out through your mouth as if you are gently releasing the day. There is nothing you need to follow closely, nothing you need to remember. Just let your breathing find its own rhythm and allow the sound of this voice to stay with you as you settle. And so the story continues, beginning or end, without effort or demand, allowing the mind to rest as long as it needs, guided only by gentle continuity and the quiet certainty that everything, for now, is exactly as it should be.